Hello students, welcome to e-learning program. Now we are going to see the sixth chapter of the history, beginning of freedom movement. Now in the last part or in the first part of this lesson, we have seen the some points are there. That is the centralization of administration during British rule, economic exploitation, then study of ancient history, then contribution of newspapers, then objectives of Indian National Congress, moderate phase, extremist phase, then partition of Bengal and anti-partition movement. We have seen these points. Now in the next part, on the second part of this lesson, we are going to see some points. First point is 4-point program of Indian National Congress. Gopal Krishna Gokhale was the president of Indian National Congress session in 1905. He supported the anti-partition movement. Dadabhai Naoroji was the president of 1906 session. For the first time, he pronounced the word Swaraj from the stage. In his presidential speech, he gave the message that remain united, then sincerely, try sincerely, and fulfill the aim of Swaraj, so that today we will be able to save lakhs of people suffering from poverty, hunger, diseases, and India will get respectable position among the developed countries. In the same session, Swaraj, Swadeshi, national education, and boycott, this 4-point program was unanimously accepted by the Indian National Congress. Due to Swadeshi movement, we will be self-sufficient movement. Then uh, to follow the path of Swadeshi, we need to bring together capital, resources, manpower, and such other forces. From these, the benefit of country could be achieved. It was decided that boycotting the foreign goods is the first step, and boycott for a foreign rule will be the next step. Due to boycott, we'll be able to attack the roots of British imperialism, was the opinion of some leaders. Okay, now what is the 4-point program is there? That is the Swaraj, Swadeshi, national education, and boycott was the 4-point program of Congress, which was accepted unanimously during this session. Okay, to follow the path Swadeshi, to become self-sufficient, need to bring together capital resources, manpower, and such other forces for the benefit of country. To boycott foreign goods was the first step, and the next step was boycotting the foreign rules. Swaraj was the final aim of the movement. Okay, now you can see here the picture of Gopal Krishna Gokhale was there. Okay, Gopal Krishna Gokhale founded the Servant of India in 1905 to create love for our country, teach them sacrifice of self-interest, differences between region and caste should be destroyed, and to create social harmony. Spread of education were the main objectives of the Servant of India society. Okay, now the next point is that the differences between moderate and extremist. Two phase we have seen there. Okay, the differences between the ideologies of Indian National Congress rose the great extent in the Surat session in 1907. The moderate were trying to keep aside resolution of Swadeshi and boycott. The extremist and the extremist trying that these opposition should not be successful. Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Surendranath Banerjee, Firoz Shah Mehta, such moderate leaders blame that the extremist leaders and trying to capture the Indian National Congress. Lala Lajpat Rai tried to act as a mediator. As per Tilak's opinion, Indian National Congress was a national platform, hence it should not be divided during the session. uh, the tension increased, and since to compromise was possible, finally there was a split in Indian National Congress. Okay, now differences between moderate and extremist leaders came up at Surat session in 1907. Moderate leaders wanted to keep aside a resolution of Swadeshi and boycott. Extremists tried to that this opposition to their program should not be successful, and moderate blames the extremists were trying to capture the Indian National Congress. But Lala Lajpat Rai to mediate. Lokmanya Tilak was of the opinion that Indian National Congress, being a national platform, should not be divided. But as no compromises was reached in this session, the Indian National Congress finally split. Okay, now the next point is the suppression of British leader is there. British government, okay, suppression of British government. After anti-partition movement, the government was disturbed looking at the influential public protest. To control this movement, the government used the policy of suppression. Holding a people meeting was legally banned. Strict punishments were given to those who broke the law. School children were also beaten up. Many restrictions were imposed on newspaper. Many printing press were confiscated on grounds of blame of criticizing the government. Writers and editors were imprisoned. Strict actions were taken against the extremist leaders. These led these led to severe reaction in Bengal. To revolutionaries adopted the means of firing, bomb blasts, etc. These bomb attacks were advocated through Kesari newspaper by Lokmanya Tilak. The charge of sedition was put on Lokmanya Tilak. Okay, for which he was sent to Mandale jail at Myanmar for 6 years imprisonment. Bipin Chandrapal was sentenced to jail and Lala Lajpat Rai was deported from Punjab. Now, suppression of British government, just British government wanted to suppress the Indian National Congress or the Indian leaders. What view to restrain the anti-partition movement? The British government resorted to suppressive measures such as, what points are there? Ban on public meeting, first of all. Then severe punishment to those who broke the law. School going children were beaten to. Restrictions on newspaper, confiscation of printing press, imprisonment of writers and editors, strict actions against the extremist leaders. But the Lokmanya Tilak was sentenced to 6 years of imprisonment to Mandale jail on the charge of sedition. Bipin Chandra Pal was imprisoned, and Lala Rajpat Rai was deported from the Punjabis there. Okay. Now the next topic is establishment of Muslim League. The British become very disturbed looking at the overwhelming response to the Indian National Congress in the anti-partition movement. The British once again followed the policy of divide and rule. They started using the propaganda that for safeguarding the interest of Muslim, they should have a separate political organization. Due to the motivation of British government, a committee of upper class Muslim under the leadership of Aga Khan made Governor General Lord Minto. Due to motivation from Lord Minto and the other British officers, the Muslim League was established in 1906. Okay. Now, the British resorted the policy to divide and rule once again in view of overwhelming response to the Indian National Congress and the anti-partition movement. The British suggested separate political organization of Muslim to safeguard their interest. With the encouragement of Governor General Lord Minto, the Muslim League was established by Aga Khan in 1906. Okay. Now the what the Monumento Act was there. Okay. Now the Monumento Act was there. There was dissatisfaction among the Indian regarding the work of British government. The Indian felt that the reason of poverty in India was economic policy of the British, oppressive policy of Lord Curzon, exclusion of educated Indians in government service, unjust behavior towards Indians in Africa. All these added to the dissatisfaction of Indian people. As a temporary remedy of discontent among Indians, the Monumento Reform Act of 1909 was passed. According to this act, it increased a number of Indian members of Legislative Assembly and provision of inclusion of some elected Indian representatives in Legislative Assembly was made. In the same act, separated electorate were provided to the Indian Muslims. Due to this conspiracy of the British, the seeds of divisions in India were sown. Okay, now what is the Monumento Act was there? The economic policies of British increased poverty in India. Oppressive policy of Lord Curzon, exclusion of educated Indians in government services, unjust treatment towards the Indians in Africa created discontent among Indians, especially as a temporary remedy to suppress the discontent. The Monumento Reform Act of 1909 was passed. Okay. Now, what is the provision to Monumento Act 1909? Increase the number of Indians in Legislative Assembly, first of all. Okay. Then it created for separate electorate for the Muslim. And third one is these sowed the seeds of division in India. It means the Hindu-Muslim departure should be there. Division of the Hindu and Muslim is there. Okay. Now the next is the Lucknow Pact is there. In the Lucknow session of Indian National Congress in 1916 of 1916 under the leadership of Lokmanya Tilak, an attempt was made to resolve dispute in the Indian National Congress. In the same year, there was an agreement between Indian National Congress and Muslim League known as Lucknow Pact. According to this pact, the Indian National Congress agreed to separate electorate to Muslims, and Muslim League agreed to support the Indian National Congress in its work for getting political rights in India. Now, to attempt what is the Lucknow Pact is that just we have seen. An attempt was made under the leadership of Lokmanya Tilak to resolve the dispute in Indian National Congress at its Lucknow session. The first of all, very important thing is that the Lucknow Pact in 1916 ensured cooperation the Muslim League by giving consent to the separate electorates. It helped the Congress to secure political rights for India. Then Lucknow Pact in 1960 was reached between the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League. According to Pact, the Indian National Congress agreed separate electorate for the Muslim, and in turn the Muslim League agreed to support them to get political right is there. Okay. Now, Home Rule movement is there. In 1914, when Lokmanya Tilak was released from Mandali jail, the First World War had begun in Europe. The direct consequences of this war had to be borne by India as well. The rates of basic necessary commodities increased. Many restrictions were put up on Indians by British government. This led to increased dissatisfaction in the minds of Indians. In these circumstances, Dr. Annie Besant and Lokmanya Tilak started the Home Rule movement. Home Rule means self-government. Home Rule means self-government. Such movement also began in Ireland against colonialism. On similar times, Home Rule movement demanded right of self-government in India. Annie Besant and Lokmanya Tilak made extensive tour in different parts of the country, and demand for self-government reached the common people. Tilak finally started that Swaraj is my birthright and I shall have it. स्वराज मेरा जन्म सिद्ध हक है और मैं उसे लेकर ही रहूंगा, ये घोषणा लोकमान्य तिलक ने उस टाइम दी थी. होम रूल मीन्स सेल्फ रूल, सेल्फ गवर्नमेंट. Due to the First World War in August 1914, the prices of daily commodities rose and British government imposed many restrictions. In these circumstances, the Home Rule movement was started by Annie Besant and Lokmanya Tilak. It demanded right of self-government in India. Lokmanya firmly declared Swaraj is my birthright and I shall have it. Okay. Now, the next topic is that the First World War, First World War and India. Okay, the war atmosphere in Europe, growing dissatisfaction in the minds of Indians, popularity of Home Rule movement. In such conditions, it was necessary for British to get cooperation from Indians. Okay, now the British government decided to provide some political rights to the Indians. In 1917, Montagu, Secretary of State for India, declared that the step by step Indians will be given the right to self-government and responsible political system. Tilak also declared that if the government is going to show sympathy and considerable attitude towards the demands of Indians, only then Indian public is ready to cooperate the British. This policy of Lokmanya Tilak is known as responsive cooperation. Okay. Now the next and the last topic is there, the Montagu Chelmsford Reform Act. In 1919, the British Parliament passed another act to bring constitutional reform in India. This act is known as Montagu Chelmsford Reform Act. Okay, now according to this act, less important departments were transferred to the Indian ministers, whereas important departments like finance, home affairs, and revenue were under the control of governor. In 1919, Act did not give much exposure to the demand for responsible government of Indians. Everybody was disappointed due to this act. Tilak criticized the act in the following words: this is neither Swaraj nor its foundation. The Indians understood that if they have to subdue the British government, then agitation need to be more rigorous. India got prepared for a new movement is there. Now Montagu Chelmsford Reform 1919. According to this act, some less important departments at provincial level were transferred to the Indian ministers. The control of governor was retained and departments like finance, revenue and home affairs. This act was supposed to lay the foundation of responsible government in India, but it disappointed the people. Lokmanya Tilak criticized the act, saying it was neither Swaraj nor its foundation. Okay. Now before below the lesson there is exercises given there. Just you have to write these question answers in your homework notebook. Okay, thank you.